On the 28th of February 2026, the United States and Israel struck Iran, and the world woke up to a different oil market. The Strait of Hormuz closed. Prices doubled. The International Energy Agency declared the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. And while all of that was happening, Beijing watched the situation shift in its favor. Because there's something more profitable than winning a war. It's letting your adversary fight one and collecting the benefits while they bleed. How did China pull this off? And what does this silent victory mean for the global balance of power?
As the war with Iran blows up and cools down from week to week, one trend is clear. The biggest beneficiary of this conflict is China.
To understand Beijing's profit, you need to look at what happened on the battlefield Washington believed it controlled. Because what looked like a war between the US and Iran was, in fact, the perfect setup for one of the greatest strategic coups of the century. The American plan was simple. Washington expected to repeat what worked with other nations. Fast, overwhelming action, declare victory, and leave. The Venezuela model, the Iraq model. Go in, win, go home. The problem is that Iran has something none of those countries had. In under 72 hours, Iran closed the main artery of global oil. The Strait of Hormuz, the corridor through which 20% of the world's oil flows, was blocked with drones, missiles, and naval mines. Nobody wanted to underwrite maritime insurance. Sailors refused to make the crossing. Brent crude jumped from under 70 to over $120. Tehran even charged a toll. $1 per barrel, $2 million per tanker in a single passage. Iran turned the strait into a cash register. Washington was trapped in an expensive war with no clear exit. And Beijing watched the situation shift in its favor because silence was exactly what it needed to act. Before the first shots, in January and February 2026, China increased its oil imports by 16%. It bought 300,000 additional barrels per day from Russia and filled its strategic reserves to 1.4 billion barrels, 4 months of import coverage. While the market woke up to the shock, China already had the fuel and the contracts, years of systematic preparation that paid off exactly when it needed to. While Western countries paid $120 per barrel, China received Iranian and Russian oil at a discount. Chinese industrial costs rose far less than those of Western competitors, and Chinese products became even more competitive on shelves around the world, including yours. This advantage doesn't require any trade agreement. It existed before the first shot was fired. And there's a deeper layer still. Since 2021, China has had a 25-year cooperation agreement with Iran, $400 billion in below-market oil, in exchange for investments and influence. When the war started, Beijing didn't need to improvise. It negotiated safe passage for Chinese-flagged vessels, and 11 million barrels of Iranian crude continued flowing eastward in the first weeks of the conflict, paid in renminbi through the CIPS system, completely beyond the reach of American sanctions. CIPS works like SWIFT, but controlled by Beijing. Transactions in yuan, no American bank involved. No Washington sanction can touch them. Every Iranian barrel that moved through that system slipped past the only lever of control Washington still had over the conflict. China built the emergency exit years ago, and when the fire started, it was the only one with the key. China wasn't just protecting itself. While Washington bled in the Gulf, Beijing was profiting in ways nobody, not even the Pentagon, had calculated. The first gain is almost absurd. The most surprising gain was that the war solved a problem the Communist Party had been trying to solve for 3 years: Chinese deflation. Before the war, China was living through a dangerous stagnation. Factory prices falling, wage growth below 1%, the risk of what happened to Japan in the 90s and took decades to resolve. The oil price surge pushed prices up in China, exactly what Beijing needed to get its economy moving again. The American war solved a Chinese economic problem for free, without the government having to announce any stimulus or admit any weakness. And while the US was busy in the Gulf, China showed up as a rescuer in Washington's own backyard. Thailand and the Philippines, short on aviation fuel, received help from Beijing. No speeches required. Just showing up when the others didn't. Every country China supplied is a country that will remember that the next time it has to choose between Beijing and Washington. But the real masterstroke is long-term. The oil crisis accelerated the global energy transition, and China controls 91% of global solar panel manufacturing capacity and 89% of lithium-ion batteries. China didn't just profit from the oil war. It guaranteed that the next energy crisis, whenever it comes, will benefit it too. And the numbers confirm it. The IMF cut China's and the United States growth forecasts by the same amount, zero point 0.1 percentage points. The United States paid that bill with soldiers, weapons, and geopolitical exhaustion. China stayed home and still managed to cut gasoline prices when the whole world was paying more. No other government did that. But the economic gains are only half the story. The other half is colder and more lasting. Beijing watched every move in the Persian Gulf with an interest that went far beyond oil. For China, that war wasn't just a distant conflict, it was a laboratory. With the American Navy operating under pressure, China cataloged every detail: how the aircraft carriers maneuvered, how the missiles were intercepted, and above all, where Washington's logistics started to crack. That's the kind of intelligence no satellite can capture. And the reason for that obsessive interest has a name: Taiwan. The Taiwan Strait is just 180 kilometers wide, and for China's generals, what worked or failed in the Persian Gulf is the instruction manual for what they plan to do there. Every week of American exhaustion in the Middle East was a free class on how to neutralize the world's greatest power. China is already using this scenario to corner its neighbors with a devastating question. If the United States couldn't stop cheap drones from a regional power like Iran, do you really believe they'll risk everything to defend Taiwan against us? That's how China wins without firing a shot, using someone else's war to prove that American protection has a limit. But this strategic victory doesn't stay on military maps. It's rewriting the global balance of power in real time. Every war creates invisible winners. The United States was burning billions of dollars, deploying aircraft carriers, and dominating headlines with the chaos in the Middle East. China was doing the exact opposite, expanding its web. Without firing a single missile, Beijing used the vacuum to position itself as the only alternative for stability. For countries in Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East itself, the message was clear. The West brings war and sanctions. China brings railways and investment. The real masterstroke happened in the silence of boardrooms. As Western capital fled risk and uncertainty, Chinese giants moved in on what really matters: the open veins of the global economy. Strategic ports, essential mines, and energy networks that once orbited Washington or London passed, one by one, into Beijing's orbit. In the war of influence, the balance is devastating because, in the end, a power's greatest victory isn't winning a battle on the firing range. It's making the rest of the world dependent on it when its rivals are too busy fighting to notice. The United States and Israel fought Iran, and China won. That conclusion, from researcher Ryan Hass, summarizes what the world is still trying to process. Beijing's victory wasn't luck. It was engineering, built with reserves filled at the right moment, payment routes shielded from sanctions, and allies secured while Washington was looking the other way. The real balance of power was being decided in silence through contracts, infrastructure, and economic dependence. The smoke of war will clear, but the world that emerges from it already has a new architect. If you enjoyed this, follow the channel for more content like this. And tell me in the comments, do you think the United States made the right call attacking Iran, or did they open a window China had been waiting for?